Today's video is all about using sprays with your stencils. Sprays are a great way to add color and shimmer to your projects, and using them with a stencil just steps it up a bit. Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Eggen and welcome to my channel. I would love it if you subscribed, liked this video, and shared it with your friends. The stencil I'm going to be using for my project today is the Tranquil Lotus Layering Stencil from Gina K Designs. This is a 3-piece stencil. It's giving us 2 layers for the flowers and 1 for the stems. I'm going to start with a piece of layering weight cardstock and put a little bit of repositionable tape on the back to secure that down onto my work surface. Then I'm going to bring in the first layer of the stencil. These stencils are all labeled down in the bottom corner with 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to just hold that down with some Post-it tape or any other low-tack tape. The first color I'm going to start with is Sea Glass ink. All of these inks are from Gina K Designs, and I'm going to apply this ink with a blending brush. I'm going to start in the center of the flower and kind of work my way out towards the end of the petals. I'm starting in the center because whenever I go to apply my ink for the first time to a stencil, the first place I land is usually going to be the heaviest amount of ink. So by starting in the center and gradually having that fade out to a lighter color towards the end of the petals is going to help give this a little bit more dimension. Now I removed the first stencil. I'm going to line up the second layer of the stencil, again holding that down with a low-tack tape, and then I'm bringing in a darker color. This one is Tranquil Teal. Now this one, I again kind of start towards the center and work my way out, and this is going to add some really great kind of graphic detail to your petals. I'll work my way around to the rest of the open areas of the stencil. I can remove this layer and then bring in the third layer, which is going to be the stems. Now these are pretty skinny areas, so I'm just going to go ahead and apply color to it. I'm not going to worry about creating any light source to it. And this is using the fresh Asparagus Ink. This would be really great to use as just a clean and simple card. You could simply just stamp your sentiment down in the bottom or top corners, but I am going to frame this. So I just lightly pulled that away from the work surface and I'm rubbing away that tape with my finger. It rubs off real easily. And I decided to step up the background a little bit with this old letter background stamp from Simon Says Stamp. I love stamping scripty backgrounds behind my images. I could have also stamped this beforehand too. Now I wasn't really sure how this color, this is Skeleton Leaves ink from Gina K Designs. I wasn't sure how the color was going to look, so I stamped it down onto scratch paper first. I was really happy with it. It wasn't too dark, it wasn't too light. So I cleaned off the stamp. I removed that scratch paper, and then I'm taking my background. I placed a little bit of that repositionable tape on the back again and lining this up over my background stamp. Then I can close the back of my Misti. It's going to pick up the cardstock, and that tape is going to secure the cardstock down in place so it doesn't shift in my Misti. Then I can bring in and ink up that stamp again with the Skeleton Leaves ink, which is also an amalgam ink. So it is Copic friendly, watercolor friendly. It's great if you wanted to use this for a no-line coloring look. I'm going to bring my panel over to my Splat Box, and I started out by just putting my stencil over the top. This is the second layer of the stencil, and I'm going to be spritzing it with the Shimmery Snow Glimmer Mist from Gina K Designs. You want to make sure you shake that up really, really well because a lot of times the shimmer will settle to the bottom of the bottle. Now, I decided I wanted to hold my stencil in place, so I taped it to the cardstock with Post-it tape. It does kind of come up a little bit, but that's mainly because of my paper towel that's in my box. And I'm going to just kind of lightly hold it down with my fingers and spritz over the area of the stencil with that shimmery snow. Now it's going to be kind of hard to see on camera, but it really does add a lot of shimmer. It's not taking over my color. I can still definitely see that I have a light and a dark color here. I'm going to dry that with my heat tool a little bit, and then I'm going to bring this up. I'm sorry, my lights are really bright right now, but you can see that there is a lot of shimmer going on that. So that is a really great way to step up your stenciled images, is just by spraying on a shimmery type of spray. Now I decided I did want to add some splatters to this because I absolutely love adding splatters. I'm going to start with some white ink, which is one of my go-tos. I put a little bit on my work surface with a couple drops of water. I felt pretty good about that, and now I'm going to bring in a black ink. And I know this might scare some people, but I love adding this. It just really adds a slight pop of contrast to the background. I'm going to frame the design, so I am die cutting this oval shape from the Friendship Blooms coordinating die set out of some heavyweight white cardstock. I held that down with some Post-it tape, and I'm going to die cut it out with my Intracut machine. So I'm putting my cutting pad down first. I'm putting my panel down so it's blades down towards that cutting mat, and then the platform on top. So I'm always die cutting into that cutting mat. And that's going to give me a really nice frame to place over my design. As again, like I said, you could definitely just add a sentiment over the front, but I really like adding frames and little bits of dimension to my cards. I'm going to use that scrap piece that came out of my frame to stamp my sentiment, and this is coming from the Send You a Smile stamp set. It is a beautiful scripty word smile. I'm going to stamp that in some black Onyx ink, and this is a brand new stamp. I hadn't stamped this yet, so I do need to clean it, condition it. There was a little bit of just something on there from manufacturing, so I'm going to wipe that off with my tidy towel, and then I'm going to ink it up once again with the black Onyx ink. One of the things I really love about this sentiment is, for one, the script and the sentiment itself, smile, but I also love that it has a coordinating die. There are also a few smaller sentiments that go along with the word smile, so I am going to heat emboss one of those. I have a piece of black cardstock that I'm prepping with an anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to ink up the sentiment with some white pigment ink. This is one of my favorite things to do when I'm doing some white heat embossing, is just inking that up very gently with a pigment ink pad, white pigment ink pad, and then just gently stamping that down. Then I'm going to sprinkle on the white embossing powder. I can tap off any excess back into my container, and I'm going to bring in my heat tool, so after I had it warming up, I'll come over and melt the embossing powder. I have a die set from Gina K Designs. This is the strip sentiment set, and it has a variety of lengths that I can die cut out these skinny sentiments. So I just went through and picked one that was going to fit my sentiment perfectly. Once I have that lined up, I'll die cut it out, and I'm also going to die cut out the smile sentiment since I was doing all my die cutting at once. Now for the frame, I'm going to line the back of that with some foam tape to add that little bit of lift and dimension. When I go to attach the frame, I'm only going to remove the backing of the foam tape for right now from one side. I decided I wanted to shift my frame over, not have it perfectly lined up with the edges of the cardstock. I wanted to shift it, and that left-hand side isn't really going to be touching anything, so I didn't remove the backing on that just yet. I'll wait till I go and attach this to a card base. So now I have most of the flowers in there, and it's going to give me a perfect little spot for a sentiment. Here I'm just going to flip that over and trim off any of that excess. Off screen, I did create a side folding card base, so now I can add some tape runner to the back of my panel. I can remove the backing of that foam tape and place this over the front of my card base here. Sorry, a little tongue-tied. Now, when I went to go do my sentiment, I had trimmed the A off of my skinny sentiment. I thought I was going to have kind of a multi-level of that sentiment. I didn't like it. So I ended up just going with the word smile, which I think is still a beautiful sentiment all in itself. I lined it with small pieces of foam tape and then popped it up in the center. So I actually am really happy with how this turned out, even without that skinny sentiment in there. I'm finishing this off with some clear quartz sequins that I'm adding with the Connect glue in a fine tip bottle. Now I'm going to bring this in for a closer look. I'm trying to give you the best look at this, so I'm kind of shutting off a couple lights here and there because it gets a little blown out, and I really want you to see the shimmer and shine that spray gave on that one layer of the stencil. So I think it's a very fun way to use your sprays, not just for creating backgrounds, but also to be using through your stencils with your layering images. I hope you enjoyed today's card project and it has inspired you to dig out your sprays. I will have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again real soon.